I still remember the sound of their laughter.
Sharp. Cutting.
The kind that doesn't just amuse, it destroys. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at the idea that someone like me could ever matter. There I stood in my mother's pristine living room, surrounded by marble floors and crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. Wine glasses clinked. Designer heels clicked against Italian tile. And in the middle of it all, I'd just made the mistake of saying 5 words that would change everything. I can afford it now. The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then came the explosion. My sister Camille nearly choked on her wine. My brother Trent slapped his knee like I'd told the funniest joke he'd heard all year. Even my mother, God bless her cold, calculating heart, pressed her fingers to her lips to hide her smile. Rainer, Camille finally managed between giggles. Sweetie, you drive a truck older than my marriage. What could you possibly afford? He probably found a coupon, Trent added, and the room erupted again. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I stood there taking it all in. Every snicker. Every sideways glance. Every pitying shake of the head. This wasn't new. I'd been the family disappointment for so long I'd almost gotten comfortable with the role. The dreamer. The builder. The one who chose passion over profit and paid the price. But something was different that night. Maybe it was the weight of the keys in my pocket. Maybe it was knowing what they didn't. Or maybe I was just tired of being invisible. Laugh all you want, I said quietly, setting down my glass. You'll see soon enough. That only made it worse. Trent actually wiped tears from his eyes. Oh, we'll see all right. We'll see you begging for money again, like always. My mother reached over and patted my hand. The gesture was meant to be comforting, but her voice carried that familiar disappointment I'd heard my whole life. Rainer, dear, there's no shame in living within your means. Not everyone can be like your brother and sister. I could have told them right then. Could have pulled out the property deed. Could have shown them the photographs of the mansion that had taken 3 years of my life to build. The $50 million estate that now had my name on the title. But revenge tastes better when it's served cold. And I'd waited this long. I could wait a little longer. I left without another word. Let them think I was running away embarrassed. Let them believe they'd won. As I walked to my truck, yeah, the old beat-up Ford they loved to mock, I could still hear them inside. Laughing. Always laughing. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, engine idling, hands gripping the steering wheel. The mansion keys felt heavy in my jacket pocket.
Real. Solid.
Proof that everything was about to change. My phone buzzed. A text from the Realtor. Final walkthrough confirmed for next week. Congratulations again, Mr. Aldridge. I stared at those words until they blurred. Mr. Aldridge. My father's name. The man who taught me that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in what you build with your own hands. The man whose death had split this family clean down the middle. They got the money, the properties, the business empire. I got his workshop and a toolbox full of dreams. Guess we'd see who made the better investment. The light turned red ahead of me, and I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Tired eyes. Calloused hands. 3 years of 16-hour days and sleeping in a camper showed in every line on my face. But behind those eyes burned something they'd never seen before. Purpose. I whispered to my reflection, voice steady and cold. They'll never laugh at me again. The light turned green, and I drove toward a future they couldn't imagine. Because while they'd been sipping wine and counting their inheritance, I'd been building something that would make their mansions look like garden sheds. And in 2 weeks, when those gold-embossed invitations arrived at their doors, when they drove up that private road and saw what I'd created,
well,
that's when the real story begins. What would you do if your own family laughed at your dreams? Drop a comment below. The mahogany office smelled like old money and broken promises. Rain hammered against the windows that Tuesday afternoon, each drop feeling like another nail in the coffin of everything I'd believed about family. My father had been dead for 3 months. 3 months of avoiding phone calls, dodging questions about the will, pretending I didn't care what he'd left behind. But sitting in that leather chair across from his attorney, I cared. God help me, I cared more than I wanted to admit. Camille arrived first, wrapped in a coat that probably cost more than my rent. Her husband Marcus trailing behind like an expensive accessory. She kissed my cheek without looking at me. "Rainer, you look tired." "Work does that," I said.
Right.
Work. The way she said it made it sound like a foreign concept. Trent showed up 20 minutes late, because of course he did. Power move. He'd learned that from Dad, make them wait, establish dominance. He nodded at me once. Didn't even bother with words. Mom sat at the head of the table, spine straight, face unreadable. The perfect widow. She'd loved Dad in her own cold way, I think. Or maybe she just loved what he represented. The attorney cleared his throat. Robert something. I never caught his last name. Didn't matter. He was just the messenger delivering the verdict on my worth. "Let's begin," he said, unfolding papers that would rewrite our lives. "To my eldest daughter Camille, I leave the Manhattan condo and its adjoining accounts, valued at approximately $4.2 million. Camille's smile could have lit the city. Marcus squeezed her hand. "To my son Trent, I leave the Aldridge estate in Fairfield, along with all business holdings and partnerships, valued at approximately $12 million. Trent leaned back, that smug grin spreading across his face. He'd been groomed for this his whole life. Golden boy. Heir apparent. Dad's legacy in human form. My turn. The room went quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. "And to my youngest son, Rainer, I leave my workshop, its contents, and my personal tools." 6 seconds of silence. I counted them.
1, 2,
3,
4, 5,
6. Then Camille's laugh slipped out. Not loud. Just a quiet snort she tried to catch behind her manicured fingers. But I heard it. We all did. Trent didn't even try to hide his amusement. "A workshop? Dad left you a workshop?" He shook his head. "Guess he knew you'd be more comfortable with a hammer than a house." The attorney kept reading something about provisions and clauses, but I couldn't hear him anymore. Blood rushed in my ears. My chest felt tight. Not because of the money. I'd never expected millions. But because of what it meant. 4.2 million. 12 million. And me? I got Dad's old tools and a space where he used to build birdhouses on Sunday afternoons. Mom reached across the table, her hand cold on mine. "Rainer, dear," she murmured, voice dripping with sympathy that felt more like pity. "You never cared about money anyway. You always said happiness was more important than wealth." I had said that when I was young and stupid and believed that doing what you loved was enough. "Besides," Trent added, standing up and buttoning his jacket, "someone has to be the starving artist in the family. Might as well be you." They left talking about dinner plans and investment strategies. I sat there staring at the paper in front of me. Workshop.
tools, contents.
My inheritance fit on 3 lines. I drove to the workshop that evening. It sat behind the main estate, a converted barn Dad had claimed as his own years ago. The key stuck in the lock, hadn't been opened in months. Inside, dust floated in the dying light. His workbench stood exactly as he'd left it. Half-finished projects lined the walls. Sketches pinned to corkboards. The smell of sawdust and motor oil. I walked through slowly, touching things. His favorite hammer. The level he'd used on every project since I was born. Coffee mug still sitting on the table, rings stained into the wood underneath. This was it. My entire inheritance. Not even enough to insult me properly. I was about to leave when I kicked something. An old toolbox, under the bench. Red metal, scratched and dented. I'd seen it 1,000 times, but never opened it. Inside were the usual things. Screwdrivers. Measuring tape. Random bolts and screws in Ziploc bags. Then I saw it. Tucked into the bottom, under a layer of loose papers, a folder.
Thick. Worn.
Held together with rubber bands that crumbled when I touched them. I opened it. The first page was a hand-drawn map. Property lines. Coordinates. And at the top, in Dad's handwriting, Eden's Reach. My hands shook as I flipped through. Sketches, building plans, permits from 30 years ago, and a deed, faded but legal, with my name listed as successor. At the bottom of the folder, a note. Dad's handwriting. 3 sentences that changed everything. For the son who sees what others miss. Build what I couldn't finish. Make it beautiful. I stood there in that dusty workshop, holding papers worth more than anything my siblings inherited, and realized something. Dad hadn't forgotten me. He'd been waiting for me to find this. Have you ever discovered something that completely changed your life? Tell us in the comments. The property was 40 minutes outside the city, hidden behind a wall of overgrown trees and a rusted gate that looked like it hadn't been opened since I was in high school. The map Dad left was barely readable, but I traced the route 3 times to be sure. This was it. Eden's Reach. I parked on the side of the access road and climbed over the gate. The chain holding it shut had fused with rust years ago. On the other side, nature had reclaimed everything. Weeds taller than my head lined what used to be a driveway. Trees grew sideways, branches creating a tunnel of green shadows. Every step forward felt like pushing through time itself, walking backward into something forgotten. Then I saw it. The clearing opened up like a secret. At the center stood the skeleton of a building, foundation poured, walls half raised, then abandoned. Concrete crumbling, rebar exposed and rusting, graffiti tagged across what remained. This was supposed to be Eden's Reach? It looked like a graveyard for broken dreams. I walked through slowly, trying to match what I saw with the sketches in Dad's folder. The proportions were right. The foundation placement matched his drawings. But everything else was just stopped. Like someone hit pause and never came back. Why would Dad leave me this? A half-finished disaster in the middle of nowhere? I was about to turn back when I saw something carved into one of the concrete support beams. Worn down by weather, but still visible. A sketch. Rough. Done with a nail, or knife maybe. But unmistakable. It was Dad's design. The same one from his folder. A mansion built into the hillside, overlooking the valley below. Glass and stone, and wood all flowing together like music. He'd stood here, right here, and carved his vision into the foundation he poured. This wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. I traced the carving with my fingers, feeling every groove. My throat tightened. How many times had Dad driven out here alone? How many hours had he spent imagining what this could become? Mr. Aldridge? I spun around. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing, picking her way through the weeds. 50s maybe. Professional blazer despite the wilderness. Briefcase in hand. Sorry to startle you, she said, extending her hand. Margaret Chen. Larkin Realty. I've been trying to reach you for weeks.
About what?
She looked around the ruins like she was seeing a palace.
About this.
Your father purchased this land in 1989, started development in 1991, then stopped. She pulled papers from her briefcase. I've been handling the property taxes and maintenance fees for decades. When your father passed, you were listed as the successor. Successor to what? This place is worthless. Margaret smiled. Not pity. Something else. Recognition maybe. That's what everyone thinks. But 3 months ago, Ridgeway Hills got approved for massive development. New tech corridor. Shopping centers. Luxury housing. She handed me a document. Property values in this area have increased 800%. I stared at the numbers. They didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. You're standing on a gold mine, Mr. Aldridge. This land alone is worth close to $6 million. But if you actually built something here, following your father's original vision. She gestured at the valley below. You'd be looking at property worth $50 million. Maybe more. The folder felt heavy in my backpack. Dad's sketches. His notes. His dream carved into concrete. Why didn't he finish it? I asked. Margaret's expression shifted. Sadness underneath the professional mask. Your mother made him choose. The family or the dream. He chose the family. She looked at me carefully. But he never sold it. Paid every tax bill. Every fee. kept it waiting.
For me.
The realization hit like a physical blow. While Camille got the condo and Trent got the estate, I got this. The one thing Dad couldn't let go of. The vision he'd protected for 30 years. Not a consolation prize. A test. Could I see what he saw? Could I finish what he started? Could I build something that mattered more than money? Margaret was watching me. So, what do you want to do, Mr. Aldridge? Sell it and walk away with $6 million? Or take a risk? I looked at the ruins. The weeds. The graffiti. The carving of a dream that refused to die. Camille's laugh echoed in my memory. Trent's smirk. Mom's pitying pat on the hand. I want to build it, I said. Exactly as he designed it. Margaret's smile widened. Then we should talk about architects and contractors. No, I said, pulling out Dad's folder. I'll do it myself, just like he would have wanted. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Mr. Aldridge, do you have any idea what that would cost? The time involved? The expertise required? No, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. Would you take the risk or play it safe? Let us know below. I sold my architectural firm for $200,000. Not much for 10 years of work, but it was seed money. Every penny went into Eden's reach. My partner thought I was insane. Ray, you could take that $6 million, invest it safely, and never work again. Why throw it away on some fantasy? Because it wasn't a fantasy. It was a promise. I moved out of my apartment and bought a used camper, 22 feet of cramped living space that became my home. Parked it right on the property, next to the ruins of Dad's abandoned dream. The first 3 months were pure demolition. Clearing weeds, removing the damaged concrete, hauling away 30 years of decay. I hired a small crew, local guys who needed work and didn't ask too many questions. Every morning I woke up at 5, worked until dark, fell into bed exhausted. Repeated. My phone buzzed constantly those first weeks. Mom checking if I was okay. Camille sending articles about safe investments. Trent's texts were more direct. You're wasting your inheritance on dirt and dreams. I stopped answering. Because here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't building a house. I was building proof. Proof that Dad's judgment wasn't wrong. Proof that dreams matter more than dollars. Proof that the son they laughed at could create something they'd never forget. The foundation took 6 weeks to pour properly. I worked alongside the crew, mixing concrete until my hands bled through the gloves. Dad's sketches were taped inside the camper, studied every night by flashlight. He designed Eden's reach to flow with the land, not fight it. The main structure would sit into the hillside, glass walls facing the valley, stone and cedar exterior, copper roof that would age into patina. Every detail intentional, every choice meaningful. But money ran out faster than I expected. By month 4, I was taking side jobs, renovations, deck repairs, anything that paid cash. I'd work other sites during the day, then come back to Eden's reach at night, pushing forward by generator light. My old crew started drifting away.
Can't blame them.
I couldn't pay consistently. Couldn't promise timelines. Couldn't offer anything but belief in a vision they couldn't see yet. I found myself working alone more often than not. Just me, Dad's plans, and the slow transformation of Earth into architecture. Month 6, the bank rejected my loan application. Too risky. Insufficient collateral. No proven track record with projects this scale. I sat in the camper that night, staring at Dad's sketches, doing math that didn't add up. I'd burned through most of my savings. The structure was barely 40% complete. At this rate, I'd run out of money long before I ran out of dream.
My phone rang. Mom.
I answered. Rainer, sweetheart, I'm worried about you. Camille said you're living in a trailer. Is that true? It's temporary. Come home. Sell the property. Take the money and do something sensible with it. Sensible. Their favorite word. Code for safe. For small. For acceptable. I can't do that, Mom. Her sigh carried decades of disappointment. Your father would want you to be practical, Rainer. He'd want you to take care of yourself. Dad carved his vision into the foundation, Mom. with his own hands. He kept this place alive for 30 years waiting for someone to finish it. My voice cracked. He was waiting for me. Silence on the other end. I have to go, I said and hung up. That night, I walked the half-finished structure in darkness. Ran my hands over the beams I'd raised, the walls I'd framed, the windows I'd measured 3 times to match Dad's exact specifications. This was already more than they'd ever believed I could do. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I was about to head back to the camper when I saw headlights coming up the access road. No one knew about this place except Margaret and my family. A car parked. Door opened. Someone stepped out holding an envelope. They walked to the camper, left the envelope on the step, and drove away without a word. I waited until the taillights disappeared before approaching. Inside the envelope, a check.
And signed.
No note except 3 words written on the memo line. For Eden's Reach. $50,000. My hands shook holding it. No name. No return address. Just money and belief. Someone out there knew what I was building. Someone believed it mattered. I looked up at the half-finished mansion silhouetted against stars and whispered to the darkness. Then I'll build my ghosts a home. Have you ever received help from an unexpected place? Share your story. Year 2 nearly broke me. Not financially, though that came close. Not physically, though I lost 20 pounds I didn't have to lose. It was the doubt that almost won. The kind of doubt that creeps in at 3 in the morning when you're lying in a camper that smells like mildew and defeat. When your body hurts in places you didn't know could hurt. When every logical voice says quit. Spring brought storms that washed out 3 months of work. I watched mudslides take out retaining walls I'd spent weeks building. Foundation cracks appeared overnight. Water damage spread through lumber I couldn't afford to replace. I filed insurance claims that got rejected. I called in favors from people who'd run out of patience. Worked 18-hour days trying to outrun failure. Then the internet found me. Someone had posted photos online. My old firm partner, probably. Pictures of me covered in concrete dust, living in a camper, working on what they called a millionaire's junkyard fantasy. The comments were vicious. This is what happens when pride meets stupidity. Dude's gonna die broke and alone for a building nobody wants. His family's probably embarrassed. That last one was the only one that got it right. Camille called, voice dripping with concern that felt more like condescension. Rainer, people are talking. It's reflecting poorly on the family. Maybe it's time to admit this isn't working. It's working fine. I lied. Living in a camper is not fine. Working yourself to death is not fine. Wasting Dad's legacy on some ego project is not fine. I hung up on her.
Trent was more direct.
He showed up unannounced one Tuesday afternoon, stepping out of his Mercedes like he was touring a disaster zone. Jesus, Ray. This is what you're killing yourself for. He gestured at the half-finished structure. It's just wood and stone. It's not worth your life. It's more than that. No, he said, voice sharp. It's not. It's you trying to prove something to people who don't care.
Dad's dead.
He's not coming back to pat you on the head and say you're special. I wanted to hit him. Wanted to break his perfect teeth and designer sunglasses. Instead, I just stood there, hands clenched, jaw tight. Get off my property, I said quietly. He laughed. Actually laughed. Your property.
Right.
The property you'll lose in 6 months when you can't afford the taxes. He drove away trailing dust and superiority.
I should have quit then.
Should have admitted they were right. Should have sold it all and lived comfortably on the money. But that night, sitting in the unfinished great room under stars visible through the exposed framing, I remembered something Dad used to say. Anyone can start. Finishing is what separates dreamers from builders. So, I kept building. Found new crew members willing to work for reduced rates in exchange for learning custom techniques. Negotiated with suppliers for payment plans. Took on 3 additional renovation contracts to keep money flowing. Sleep became optional. Meals became functional. Everything else fell away except the singular focus of finishing Eden's Reach. Month 18, the roof went on. copper panels that caught sunrise like fire. Month 20, the glass walls were installed. Floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the valley like living paintings. Month 22, the interior work began. Custom woodwork. Stone fireplaces. The library Dad had sketched 50 times trying to get the proportions perfect. I built it all exactly as he'd drawn it. Down to the secret bookshelf door he'd designed. Down to the window seat in the master bedroom that overlooked the koi pond he'd planned, but never dug. I dug that pond myself. Lined it with stone. Filled it with water that reflected sky. Year 3, I carved his name into the foundation stone. Right next to where he'd carved his vision decades before. Samuel Aldridge. Dreamer. Builder. Father. The mansion grew around me like a promise kept. Every room a tribute. Every detail a prayer. Every nail a refusal to quit. My hands were scarred. My savings were gone. My relationships were destroyed. But Eden's reach was rising. And in month 34, when the final inspector signed off and Margaret handed me the certificate of occupancy, I stood in the completed mansion and cried. Not because it was finished, because it was perfect. Margaret found me in the great room, tears streaming down my face, surrounded by $50 million of vindication. The market assessment came back, she said softly. $52 million. Congratulations, Mr. Aldridge. I barely heard her. I was staring at Dad's sketch framed on the wall, comparing it to the room around me. Identical. There's something else, Margaret continued. Your mother's 75th birthday is next month. Big party at the family estate. I looked at her, looked at the keys in her hand, looked at the mansion that proved everything they'd doubted. Yeah, I said slowly. Maybe it's time they saw what I built. Could you work 3 years on a dream everyone mocked? Drop your thoughts below. The mansion was finished, but I wasn't ready to show it yet. Not because it needed anything. Every detail was perfect, every room exactly as Dad had envisioned. I wasn't ready, because I wanted to live in it first. To breathe in what we'd built together across time and death. I moved out of the camper on a Thursday morning. 3 years of cramped living, cold showers, and generator power finally ending. Walking through the front doors of Eden's Reach with my single duffel bag felt surreal. The foyer stretched 2 stories high, natural light pouring through skylights Dad had positioned to catch morning sun. My footsteps echoed on marble floors I'd laid myself, each tile chosen to match his original sketches. I walked through slowly, touching everything. The banister I'd sanded for 3 weeks straight. The stone fireplace built from river rock I'd collected by hand. The library where Dad's original blueprints now hung in climate-controlled frames. Each room told a story. Not just of construction, but of transformation. The dining room where I'd eaten hundreds of meals alone, dreaming of the day it would host something that mattered. The master bedroom where I'd imagined my father standing, approving, proud. The sunroom became my favorite space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, copper ceiling catching dawn like liquid gold. I'd spent 3 months getting the angles perfect, making sure the light moved through the space exactly as Dad had drawn it. I made coffee that first morning in my completed kitchen. Stood at the window watching sunrise paint the valley in colors that had no names.
And I cried.
Again. Because I'd done it. Against every odd, every doubt, every person who'd said impossible. My phone buzzed. Mom's assistant. The invitation to her 75th birthday party had arrived weeks ago, forwarded to my old address, now catching up to me. Fairfield Estate. Black tie. Family only. Family only. The phrase tasted bitter. I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. They'd stopped calling after month 6, once it became clear I wasn't quitting. Easier to pretend I didn't exist than watch me fail publicly. But I hadn't failed. I stood in $52 million of proof that their judgment meant nothing. Margaret called that afternoon. The appraisal report is finalized. Photos are incredible. I've already had 3 inquiries from buyers if you're interested in selling. I'm not. I figured. So, what's next? I looked around the great room. At the life I'd built from mockery and mud. at the legacy I completed for a dead man who'd believed in me more than the living ever had. Next, I said slowly, I think it's time for a family reunion. That night, I walked the grounds as stars emerged. The koi pond reflected constellations Dad never got to see here. The gardens I'd planted were still young but growing. Give them time, they'd be magnificent. I stopped at the foundation stone where I'd carved his name. Ran my fingers over the letters. I finished it, Dad, I whispered. Exactly like you drew it. Every single detail. The wind moved through the trees, and for a moment I could have sworn I heard him answer. The invitation sat on my desk for 3 days before I decided. Not whether to go, I was definitely going. But how to arrive? What to say? How to make them understand without saying a word? Then it hit me. I wouldn't tell them anything. I'd show them. I called Margaret. I need you to prepare a portfolio. Photos, appraisals, the complete property package. And I need you to be available next Saturday at 3 p.m. For what? To hand me the keys to my house. Officially. In front of witnesses. Her pause told me she understood exactly what I was planning. You're going to make them come here, aren't you? I'm going to invite them to see what they said I couldn't build. Rainer, are you sure? This feels like justice, I finished. Quiet justice. She laughed.
All right.
I'll prepare everything. But you're buying me dinner after this drama unfolds. Deal. I spent the next week preparing. Had the house professionally photographed. Hired a small catering staff. Made sure every light fixture worked, every surface gleamed, every detail screamed perfection. Then I designed the invitations. Gold paper. Wax seal. Hand calligraphy. The kind of invitation you don't throw away, you keep. Inside, 6 words that would change everything. You are cordially invited to Eden's Reach. No explanation. No address they'd recognize. Just the name Dad had chosen 40 years ago for a dream they'd forgotten existed. I mailed them on Tuesday. Camille would get hers Wednesday. Trent on Thursday. Mom on Friday. By Saturday, they'd all be curious enough to come. And when they arrived, when they saw what their laughter had built, when they realized the brother they dismissed had created something they could never touch.
Well,
that's when everything would finally make sense. I stood on the balcony that night, looking out over the valley, over the mansion that refused to be impossible, and smiled. They wanted me to fail, so they'd feel superior. Instead, I'd built something that made their success look ordinary. The invitation was in the mail. The stage was set. The 3 years of silence were about to become the loudest statement I'd ever make. And I couldn't wait to see their faces when they realized the punchline of this joke was them. Have you ever proven someone wrong without saying a word? Tell us how in the comments. I showed up uninvited to Mom's birthday party because sometimes you have to interrupt your own humiliation before they can serve dessert. The Fairfield estate looked the same as always. Manicured lawns. Fountain in the driveway. Valet parking for cars worth more than most houses. I pulled up in my truck. Yeah, still driving it, and watched the kid in the red vest try to hide his judgment. Sir, this is a private event. I'm family, I said, handing him the keys. Rainer Aldridge. His expression shifted. Recognition mixed with confusion. Pretty sure he'd heard stories about the family failure who lived in a camper. Inside, the party was exactly what I expected. Crystal. Champagne. People who measured worth in stock portfolios and vacation homes. I hadn't worn a suit in 3 years, but I'd bought one for this. Dark blue. Fit perfectly. I looked like I belonged, even though we all knew I didn't. The whispers started before I reached the dining room. Is that Rainer? I heard he went bankrupt. Didn't he lose everything on some construction disaster? I smiled and kept walking. Mom was holding court near the fireplace, surrounded by her society friends. She saw me and her face went through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, concern, then practiced politeness. Rainer, you came. She kissed my cheek like we did this all the time. You should have called ahead. Surprises are more fun, I said. Camille appeared at my elbow, designer dress probably worth more than my entire wardrobe. Rainer.
Wow.
You clean up adequately. The pause before adequately said everything. Thanks. You look expensive. Her laugh was sharp. How's the project going? The what do you call it? Your artisan garage thing. It's finished, actually. Trent joined us, drink in hand, smirk firmly in place. Finished? The whole thing? Must be a really small garage. The crowd around us grew. Nothing entertains rich people like watching someone fail publicly. It's decent-sized, I said. About 11,000 square feet.
Trent choked on his drink.
11,000? You built an 11,000 square foot garage. Not a garage. A house. Camille's expression shifted from amusement to confusion. A house? Rainer, where did you get money for? Dad's property. Eden's Reach. I finished what he started. Silence dropped like a bomb. Mom stepped forward. Rainer, honey, that property was abandoned. Your father gave up on it decades ago. There's nothing there, but... There is nothing there, I corrected. Now there's a mansion. Trent laughed. Not the polite social laugh. The real one. The cruel one. A mansion.
Right.
Built by you. On that worthless dirt plot no one wanted. It's not worthless anymore. Oh, please, Camille cut in. Rainer, we love that you're passionate about construction, but let's be realistic. You've been living in a trailer for 3 years. You can't possibly. I actually just closed on the property, I said casually, sipping champagne I'd grabbed from a passing tray. The appraisal came back at $52 million. The room went silent.
Completely.
Like someone had hit mute on reality. Camille's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Trent stared. That's not possible. I have the paperwork if you want to see it. You're lying, Trent said, but his voice cracked. You can't afford property taxes on $50 million. You drive a 20-year-old truck. I like my truck, I said. Reminds me where I came from. Mom was pale. Rainer, are you saying you actually built your father's mansion? Eden's Reach? Exactly as he designed it. Every detail. Took 3 years, but it's perfect. Someone in the crowd laughed nervously. Come on, this is a joke, right? Rainer Aldridge doesn't own a $50 million property. I pulled out my phone, showed them the photos Margaret had compiled. The exterior shots. The great room. The library. The sunroom catching dawn. The silence got heavier. That's actually incredible, someone whispered. Camille grabbed my phone, scrolling through pictures. Her hands shook slightly. This can't be real. Where did you get the money? Sold my firm. Took side jobs. Worked 16-hour days for 3 years. Built it myself. Trent was still shaking his head.
No.
No way. That property was worthless. Dad abandoned it because it was impossible. Dad abandoned it because Mom made him choose, I said quietly. Family or dream. He chose family. But he never sold it. He kept it waiting. Mom's eyes filled with tears. He told me he'd forgotten about it. He lied. He paid the taxes every year for 30 years. And when he died, he left it to me. Not the condo. Not the estate. The dream he couldn't finish. I looked around the room at all their faces.
Shock.
Disbelief. And underneath, the first flickers of respect I'd ever seen from them. I'm having a viewing next Saturday, I said. 3 p.m. You're all invited. I looked directly at Trent. Come see what worthless dirt looks like when someone actually believes in it. I set down my champagne glass and walked toward the exit. Behind me, Camille's voice. Rainer, wait. But I didn't wait. I'd waited 33 years for them to see me. They could wait 1 more week. Would you have confronted them sooner or waited like Rainer? Drop your answer below. The gold invitations arrived at their homes on Wednesday morning. I knew because Camille called within an hour. Rainer, this invitation is gorgeous. Where did you even? See you Saturday, I said and hung up. Trent texted. If this is some kind of prank, it's not funny. I didn't respond. Mom called that evening. Her voice was different.
Softer.
Rainer, sweetheart, I need to ask you something honestly. Is this real? Did you really build your father's mansion? You'll see Saturday. I need to know now. I need to know if I misunderstood your father all these years. You did, I said gently. But so did I. Until I didn't. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. Walked through Eden's Reach for hours, checking every detail obsessively. The catering staff had been briefed. Margaret had the paperwork ready. Everything was perfect. But I was terrified. Not that they wouldn't be impressed. I knew they would be. I was terrified that even this wouldn't be enough. That even standing in $52 million of proof, they'd find some way to diminish it. To make it smaller than it was. At midnight, I sat in the library surrounded by Dad's original sketches, and I had a conversation with him I'd been avoiding for 3 years. What if it's not enough, Dad? What if I built this whole thing, and they still don't see me? The house creaked. The wind moved through the trees outside. And I swear I heard his voice in my head, clear as day. You didn't build this for them. You built it for you. I fell asleep in the library chair and woke to sunrise streaming through the skylights. Saturday. The day everything changed. The staff arrived at noon. By 2 p.m., the mansion was ready. Every light positioned perfectly. Every surface gleaming. The valley view framed like a painting through floor-to-ceiling windows. Margaret arrived at 2:30 with a leather portfolio containing every document that proved this was real. You ready? She asked.
No. Good.
The best moments come when you're terrified. At 2:45, I heard the first car coming up the private road. Gravel crunching. Engine cutting off. Car door opening. I stood at the entrance, dressed in the same suit from the party, watching them arrive. Camille's Mercedes appeared first around the curve. She stepped out slowly, staring up at the mansion like she couldn't process what she was seeing. Marcus behind her, mouth literally hanging open. Trent's Range Rover was next. He got out, walked to the edge of the driveway, and just stood there.
Silent.
Staring. Mom's car came last, driven by her assistant. She emerged in a cream dress, hands pressed to her mouth, tears already streaming. Oh my God, Camille whispered. Rainer, this is. Eden's Reach, I said. Welcome. They walked toward me, like people approaching a dream. Hesitant. Disbelieving. Like if they moved too fast, it might disappear. This is impossible, Trent said, but his voice had no conviction. He could see it wasn't impossible. It was real. Stone and glass and wood proof that I'd done what they said couldn't be done.
How?
Mom asked. How did you possibly? 3 years, I said simply. 16-hour days. Every penny I had. Every skill I learned. I built it exactly as Dad designed it. Margaret stepped forward right on cue, professional and perfect. Mr. Aldridge, if you're ready, I have the final documents. She opened the portfolio, pulled out the deed, the appraisal report, the certificate of occupancy, and finally, a set of keys on a silver ring. Congratulations, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Eden's Reach is officially yours. Appraised value, $52 million. Property registered solely to Rainer Samuel Aldridge. She placed the keys in my hand. The weight of them felt like vindication. I turned to my family, and for the first time in my life, I saw them speechless. You laughed when I said I could afford it, I said quietly. Guess you should have saved your applause. Camille was crying. Trent looked like someone had punched him. Mom stood frozen, staring at the mansion like she was seeing a ghost. Come inside, I said. Let me show you what Dad dreamed about for 30 years. Have you ever had a moment where you proved everyone wrong? Share it in the comments below. Walking my family through Eden's Reach felt like conducting a symphony of silence. Every room we entered, their expressions shifted through disbelief, awe, then something that looked painfully close to regret. The foyer stretched before us, sunlight pouring through skylights positioned exactly where Dad had sketched them. Camille's heels clicked on marble I'd laid by hand, each tile chosen to match his original vision. This is the entryway, I said unnecessarily. They could see what it was. What they couldn't see was the 3 weeks I'd spent getting the stone pattern perfect, the nights I'd slept on the floor because I was too exhausted to walk back to the camper. We moved to the great room. Trent stopped walking entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the valley like a living painting. The stone fireplace rose 2 stories, built from river rock I'd collected myself. Custom woodwork lined the walls. Mahogany and cedar mixed in patterns Dad had drawn 50 times before getting it right. "This is impossible," Trent whispered, but there was no mockery anymore. Just shock. "It's not impossible," I said. "It's finished." Mom walked to the windows, pressed her palm against the glass. "Your father stood in our kitchen once, describing this exact view. He said it would be like living inside a sunrise." Her voice broke. I told him it was foolish, that we didn't need another property. "He never forgot it," I said. "He kept paying the taxes, kept the dream alive." Camille was touching everything. The banister, the walls, the custom light fixtures I designed to match Dad's sketches. "You built all this yourself?" "Most of it. Hired help for the foundation and framing. Everything else, yeah.
Me.
In 3 years. 3 years and 2 months. But who's counting?" We moved through the house slowly. I showed them the library. 3 walls of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, rolling ladder, reading nooks with windows positioned to catch afternoon light. Dad's original blueprints hung in climate-controlled frames. The dining room could seat 20. The table was live-edge walnut I'd found at an estate sale, refinished over 6 weekends. The chandelier was custom, copper and crystal design to match the exterior roofing. "How much did this cost?"
Trent asked.
"Everything I had," I said honestly. "And then everything I could borrow, beg, or work for." "But you said the appraisal is 52 million.
Yeah.
I spent about 8 million building it. Math works out pretty well." His face went pale. "You turned Dad's worthless property into $44 million of profit." "I turned Dad's abandoned dream into something that matters more than profit." We climbed to the 2nd floor. The master bedroom overlooked the koi pond I'd dug myself, lined with stones I'd placed one by one. The bathroom had heated floors, a soaking tub positioned to frame the sunset, and the rain shower Dad had sketched with the note, like standing in a warm waterfall. "He thought of everything," Mom whispered, looking at the sketches I'd framed and hung throughout. "Every detail."
He did.
I just brought it to life. The final room was the sunroom, my favorite space, where dawn poured through glass like liquid gold, where the copper ceiling caught light and threw it in patterns that danced across walls. Camille stood in the center, turning slowly. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. This is where Dad wanted to have breakfast every morning," I said. "Where he imagined growing old, watching the valley change with seasons." "With Mom," Camille added softly.
Yeah.
"With Mom." The silence stretched, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Trent spoke. "I was wrong. About everything.
About you.
About this place. About—" His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Ray. I'm really sorry." Camille was crying openly now. "We laughed at you. At your dinner. At the party. We made you feel worthless." "You tried," I corrected gently. "But you can't make someone worthless who knows their worth." Mom approached me slowly.
Took my hands.
"You're more like your father than any of us. He would be so proud."
He is proud, I said.
"I can feel it in every room." We walked back downstairs slowly. The catering staff had prepared dinner, simple but elegant. We sat at the walnut table, my family surrounding me for the first time in years, and for once, no one said anything cruel. No jabs. No mockery. No condescension.
Just quiet respect.
As they prepared to leave, Trent stopped at the door. "Can I ask you something?"
Sure. Why?
"Why go through all this? You could have sold the land, taken the money, lived comfortably. Why build this?" I looked around the foyer, at the home I'd pulled from paper and mud and stubborn belief. Because someone had to finish what he started. Someone had to prove that dreams don't die just because the dreamer does. Trent nodded slowly. "You didn't just build a house, Ray. You built a legacy." "No," I said, smiling. "I completed one. Have you ever finished something others gave up on? Tell us your story in the comments. They left as the sun set, their cars disappearing down the private road one by one. I stood on the balcony watching taillights fade, the valley stretching dark and infinite below. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full,
Complete.
like the final note of a song you've been waiting your whole life to hear. I walked back inside, through rooms that no longer felt like proof or vindication. They just felt like home. The library where Dad's dreams lived in frames. The great room where his vision became reality. The sunroom where morning would arrive tomorrow, golden and new. In the kitchen, I made coffee. Stood at the window watching stars emerge. My reflection stared back from the glass. Older than 3 years ago, more scarred, but fundamentally changed in ways that had nothing to do with age or appearance. I'd walked into that attorney's office believing I was nothing. That Dad's will had confirmed what the family always thought. I was worth less than them. Worth only tools and forgotten space. But Dad hadn't given me less. He'd given me everything. The dream he couldn't finish. The vision he'd protected. The land he'd kept alive through decades of doubt. He'd given me the chance to prove that worth isn't measured in bank accounts or inheritances or social status. It's measured in what you build when no one believes you can. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Your father left you a letter with his attorney. I'm having it delivered tomorrow. He made me promise not to give it to you until you finished. I didn't understand until tonight. I'm sorry it took me so long. I stared at those words until they blurred. He knew. Somehow, Dad knew I'd finish it. That night, I opened his old sketchbook. The one I'd found in the workshop 3 years ago. Flipped to the last page I'd never thought to check. There, in his handwriting, a final note dated 2 weeks before he died. Rainer, if you're reading this, it means you found Eden's reach.
It means you saw what I saw.
It means you understood. Your siblings are smart, driven, successful by any measure society uses. But you, my boy, you're something they'll never be. You're a builder. Not just of structures, but of meaning, of beauty, of things that matter beyond money. I gave them wealth because wealth is what they understand. I gave you this because dreams are what you understand. Finish it. Make it perfect. Make it sing. And when you do, know that every nail you drive, every stone you place, I'm there with you.
Proud.
Amazed. Grateful. Build with heart, not just hands. That's how you change the world. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Then I pressed the sketchbook to my chest and let the tears come. Not sad tears. Released tears. The kind that wash away years of feeling less than. Of believing the lie that I'd failed. I hadn't failed. I'd been preparing. For the one thing that would matter more than all their success combined. The next morning, I woke to sunrise streaming through the sunroom. Made breakfast in the kitchen Dad had designed. Sat at the table he'd sketched surrounded by walls I'd built and windows that framed his dream. And I realized something profound. Quiet justice isn't about making them sorry. It's not about revenge or proving anything. It's about building something so undeniably beautiful, so completely yourself, that their opinions become irrelevant. They can laugh or cry or praise or judge. Doesn't matter. Because you've already won by becoming unshakable. I called Margaret that afternoon. I'm ready to do the interview. The architecture magazine, the business journals, whoever wants the story. You sure? You've been pretty private about this. I was building. Now I'm done. Time to let people know that impossible is just a word people use when they're too scared to try. The articles came out over the next month. Features in design magazines. Business profiles. Even a documentary crew asking to film. But the moment that mattered most came 6 weeks later. A kid showed up at the gates. 19 maybe. Nervous. Carrying a portfolio of sketches. Mr. Aldridge? I'm sorry to bother you. I'm a student at the community college. Architecture major. Everyone says it's a waste of time, that I should study business or law or something practical.
But I saw what you built and I thought, he paused.
Swallowed hard. I thought maybe you'd tell me if I'm crazy for believing I can make something beautiful. I looked at his sketches.
Rough.
Unpolished. But underneath, vision. Heart. The same hunger Dad had. The same I'd carried for 33 years. You're not crazy, I said. You're a builder. And the world needs what you'll create. His eyes filled with tears. Everyone laughs when I show them my designs. Let them laugh, I said, handing back his portfolio. Use it as fuel. Build something so incredible they forget how to close their mouths. He left smiling, shoulders straighter, purpose renewed. And standing there watching him go, I understood the final lesson Dad had been teaching me all along. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you inspire others to build. That night, I stood on the balcony, one more time. Valley dark below. Stars infinite above. The mansion glowing behind me like a beacon of every impossible thing that becomes real when someone refuses to quit. They'd laughed when I said I could afford it. When I said I'd finish it. When I believed Dad's abandoned dream was worth 3 years of my life. But I had the last laugh. Not because I'd proven them wrong. Because I'd proven myself right. Quiet justice doesn't shout. It doesn't gloat. It doesn't need their applause. It just stands tall. Unshakable. Beautiful. And when the dust settles and the noise fades, it's still there.
Permanent. Real.
A mansion built not of stone, but of stubborn, foolish, magnificent belief. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you real stories of quiet justice, resilience, and dreams that refuse to die. Drop a comment telling us about a time you proved someone wrong, or a dream you're still building. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it. Share this video with someone who's told their dream is impossible. Let's build a community that believes in finishing what others abandon. See you in the next story. What dream are you still building? Tell us in the comments and inspire others to keep going.